morning and get you out of here on time as well. My name's Jim Becker. I'm the president and CEO of the Richmond Community Foundation. And this is part of our ongoing partnership with the city of Richmond to provide key training opportunities for nonprofits and nonprofit leaders in the Richmond area. Today's on collaboration. We're excited to have actually someone I've known for quite a long time, Mariana Moore. Mariana is the director of the Ensuring Opportunity Campaign to End Poverty in Contra Costa County, which is a very large coalition of all kinds of diverse groups, opinions, and thought leaders and community residents that work on policies to end poverty. Prior to that, she was the director of the Human Resources Alliance, was a coalition of nonprofit providers who do work with Contra Costa County under different contracts. She's born and raised here in Richmond. She's both a mother and a grandmother. She's been a colleague of mine for many years. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce you to Mariana Moore.
Good morning. So I'm supposed to have 45 people here, so you guys are the pioneers who are here on time. Yay, thank you. Very happy to be with you here this morning. As Jim says, I've had about 30 years experience in collaborating, and I'm still standing, so that's a good sign, so I haven't been crying too much. And Patrick, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on behalf of the city, or you okay? Okay, thank you. And I want to start by actually thanking Patrick and his team, City of Richmond, for the wonderful series that they have partnered with Richmond Community Foundation to bring to you all. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. And today is going to be a bunch of information, but also a lot of interaction. So just be prepared to do some work at your tables. But let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So as you can see from the agenda also that's in front of you, we're going to talk about what is collaboration, because a lot of us have different stories in our head about what collaboration is and what it's not. Why collaborate? It takes a lot of time and effort and complexity, so why do it? When should we collaborate? What are the signs and signals that collaboration would be beneficial? What types of collaboration are there? There's actually a ton, as we'll see, but they have some common threads. And then we'll spend a lot of time talking about building our capacity to collaborate. Because once we talk about what it is and when to do it and why to do it, you're maybe bought in at that point, like that sounds great. But then it's like, I have a 60-hour-a-week job, or my volunteer work is, as Cordell serving on 5 committees, so how do I fit in this collaboration thing, which takes so much time? So we'll talk about what that does take and the skill sets to do it well and to, again, not be in tears at the end. And then we're gonna, we'll have several interactive pieces throughout the morning, but we're gonna end with something called a collaboration laboratory, where you really bring the information, what you've learned home to your own situation at your organization or your own community. Okay. So that's a frazzled owl there who collaborates the whole. So this is a contest, as I say, you may not want to win. So I want you to just take your agenda or a piece of paper and just quickly make tally marks or write down all the places that you currently collaborate. So that's for your work, that's for your church or congregation, that's for your kid's school. If you're on a committee or in a coalition or in a group that's planning or doing something, let's call that a collaboration in whatever sphere of your life, and just do a quick count. And we're not going to collect this, so you can just make little hash marks and count them up. It can include book clubs, garden groups, basketball team, whatever you're doing with other people on a regular basis. There's probably a couple more you haven't thought of yet because we're all so busy in so many groups, right? Your kid's soccer team, whatever it is. All right, so now let's get a taste of the room here. So how many of you are involved in absolutely no collaborations whatsoever? Nobody. What a surprise. Probably wouldn't be here if that was true. And also you would not be part of the modern world, I don't think. We're all in groups, right? How many people have 1 to 5 that you listed? A lot of you, okay. How many have 6 to 10? Oh. And what's your total, sir? 8. Okay. Well, guess what? You win today's Starbucks card because you need some caffeine. There you go. Do you have more than 10? Oh, what you got? Oh my God, you know what? We have a second Starbucks card emergency. Oh, Robert. You need maybe 2 of those. So the point being, we're all involved in a lot of collaborations. And they're kind of an inescapable, sometimes joyful, sometimes not part of our lives. So here's your next assignment. Want you to take about 10 minutes to work with the folks at your table. You'll notice that at your table you have these flip chart pads and you have a couple of pens. So I want you to work with the folks at your table, and I'll give you 10 minutes and I'll give you like a 5-minute, 2-minute warning. And what your task is to come up as a group, collaboratively, with a definition of collaboration. And no using your phone to look up what Merriam-Webster says. This is from your head. And then, secondly, your best metaphor. So if collaboration was going to be an object, an animal, a thing, whatever, what would you use to describe to someone what collaboration is in visual or metaphorical terms? Next, the 3 essential ingredients for successful collaboration. So when it's really humming along and going really great, what 3 ingredients got to be in the room, right? And then lastly, just for fun, come up with a team name for your table. And it can be as silly as you want it to be, but have some fun with that. And you have 10 minutes to do all that. So you got to really focus in, allow some time to be creative, but make sure you're moving for things. Any questions? Okay, let's go. All right, finish that last thought. We're going to come back together. Done? Thoughts for thought? Thoughts for thunk? Okay. Just for fun, we're going to start way in the back. You're not expecting it. So way back there, woohoo! Come on up, whoever your spokesperson is. Look happy about it. You get to kick us off. She needs a coffee card. Okay. So come on up here. Maybe share your name and what's your name? Oh, here's the mic.
Hakuna Matata. Do I need the mic? 'Cause I'm pretty loud, right? Oh, okay. Hakuna Matata is the name of our group. And what were our questions?
Your definition of collaboration.
So our definition of collaboration is a group of a group or individuals working together towards a common goal. Is that funny? Oh, see, great minds think alike, right? The metaphor, so we really couldn't really think of one poetically. So we think our metaphor is sort of like our team name, Hakuna Matata, which means working together collectively. Same thing, toward a common goal, or being happy as you work together.
And the three essential ingredients.
Communication, respect, and compromise.
Okay, let's go to the back, that table back there. Let's start with your team name.
Okay, so our team name is Organized Co-Labor. And what was the question? Oh, I'm sorry, the definition. The definition of collaboration is working together in the same direction. So, so the same goal. And the three essential ingredients for that collaboration. Oh, the metaphor. So here's the metaphor: is the arrow, the working arrow, and everyone working towards towards that direction. Was that it? Yes. Cool. There you go. So the little goals make the bigger goals, or excellent. Thank you for that. And the main key ingredients, the three main ingredients we came up with, it's funding, communication. It has to be a two-way communication, and underneath that, we talked about compromising and dealing with conflict within collaboration. And also, we need to have a shared plan, so we can work towards that direction and and accomplishing whatever goal in collaboration that we're involved with. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Okay, let's come to the front. We're just going to pop around here. So y'all come on up.
So, Kim, can you help me with this, please? So, thanks. So, our group name is JAC. So, Joe, Allie, and myself. So, the question was, what is definition? So, a group coming together to share time, skills, and resources for synergistic communication toward a shared goal or vision. So, our metaphor is bakery. See what people put in the bowl. Ingredients: freedom, people, and a commodity. It was an idea that came to all three of us, and so our team name is JAC Inc., like J.C. Penney, but even better.
Thank you, Cordell. Yay, Team JAC. Okay, we have our table in the front.
Hello, my name is Rasa. Our team name is Meralu because this is Mercedes, Rasa, and Lucino. And we kind of came up together. That sounds nice to us. Definition: a group of people working as a team to achieve mutually beneficial goals. And the metaphor is an orchestra, because I think an orchestra is an exceptionally good example of professionals working together diligently day after day, and they have a good leadership. They are conductor, and they are increasing their own skills every day, and as a team, they are achieving some results. And the most important ingredients: expertise, teamwork, and leadership.
Team Meralu, thank you so much. Work in 10 minutes. So now I want to spend a little bit of time kind of debriefing that exercise we use to kind of ease into what is collaboration and what has to be present for it to work well. So my first question is, I'd like to hear what you noticed as you went about that task. Because some of you may know each other, because Richmond's a small town in many ways, but some of you may be new to each other, and you were thrown into a task together. So what did you notice about what felt easy about that and what felt a little more challenging? Got it in the back there, Jim?
Easy for us, I think, is the definition of working together, because at Lifelong we do work, do a lot of collaborating and partnerships, so that was easy. What was difficult, I think, for us was coming up with a metaphor for some reason.
All right, thank you. Who else? What was easy, what was hard, what was surprising?
I think it was helpful to have the structure with the metaphor and the ingredients and some more specific things, because if it had just been to come up with a shared definition, it felt a little abstract. So it's helpful to have structure that we could follow as a group.
Interesting point there. Good one. Thank you. Who else? What about this group over here? Oh, in the back. Robert.
What was hard for me, like the definition is very defined for me from doing a lot of collective impact work, so not to use all those defined terms around what collaboration is, and to try to listen and redefine it in more like non-funder terms.
You're trying to leave the nerd out, is that what you're saying? And what about this group up here?
I think the 3 essential ingredients, I came up to so many that it's not so easy to distinguish the most important. Like, it's important. This one is important. This one is important. So it's kind of 3 is not enough in my understanding.
And then what helped you get to consensus in your small group in this very artificial, time-limited exercise, but real because you had a task and you're a group, so you had to collaborate. So what helped you get to consensus, and what may have gotten in the way a little bit? Let's start with that group back there.
This is the last time I'm going to speak for this group for a while, okay?
Fair warning, group.
Okay, so we're a morning group. The question was, what got in the way? What was
What helped you reach consensus, and what may have gotten in the way?
I don't, you know what, it could be a lot of things that help reach consensus. We're all women, that could be one thing. We all work for the same company, so that could have been, another thing. And then we're just all fabulous people, so, we just came up with a really great idea.
That goes without saying. I'm glad you said it, though.
I think what made it easy for us is that all of us contributed. So everybody had I wasn't really aware of conflict. I guess there was on a small level, trying to get to an agreement, but I can't speak for these two, but I noticed everybody had a part of the final product, so no one was left out.
Okay. What about here? What made it easy? Did anything make it a little harder?
I think what made it easy was kind of like he said, like we all contributed, and then we kind of just, we all had really good answers, but we kind of just made a decision on what felt right. We're like, no, like we all like did like that sounds good, like, and then what made it hard was that we all had different a bunch of different answers, but none of them were wrong.
And how did you navigate through the bunch of different answers to get to what went on the paper?
Well, I was scribing for us, so I was kind of like, okay, so what feels better? Do you want to go with this one or this one? And we kind of just made it like a mutual decision.
Okay, got it.
Also, when one of us would come up with an idea, we would ask like, oh, what do you think? And if we all agreed, then we would add it. So I think that was helpful to ask, like, do you guys all agree with this? So.
Thank you. Have you guys chimed in yet? On this one? Okay.
come to me. So every idea I had was it sounds like it's kind of unique in a way. So I figured this is like from experience. I know whenever I'm part of a group, I have to like to contribute. So that's all.
Okay. Next question. How did you decide your team name? And here's the edgy part. Is there anybody secretly wishing it was something else? Now, Cordell's raising his hand, but I know you chose the team name, so I hope you're not secretly wishing it was something else, Cordell. We'll get to that story in a minute. Okay. Edwin.
I was the process that we went through. You guys all went through for that. I don't know if you guys want to speak on it.
It just goes to the definition of collaboration, co-labor, working together, and I sold them on it because I have a background in union organizing.
Got it. I thought there might be some of that at that table. Okay. And then how did you decide at this table, before you go away, who came up to give the report? Because I saw something interesting around that I think I saw. So how did you decide that?
Showed up last.
Exactly. Thanks for owning that. I saw that. All right, let's come up here. So team name, how did you decide that? And was it anybody secretly wishing it was something else? And how did you decide who came up to report?
Our team name, we just said, let's take something from each of our names and put it together. And then we decided, because Rasa came up with the orchestra metaphor. So we just said, I like the way you described that. Why don't you go up there? And then what was the last thing?
That was it. Yeah, team name and how you decided. And Rasa, were you okay with being the one to come up? Yeah. Okay, so that worked. How about you guys? Team name, any secret wishes?
Cordell just kind of came up with that, and it seemed good. But for me, it was like that wasn't something that was super important to me, so I was happy to not have a long group process about it and just go with that. Same time, no.
And how did you guys decide who would come up and report?
We flipped a coin.
Yeah.
Did you really? Oh,
Yeah, it
interesting.
landed on heads, and I went up as the spokesperson.
Got
So
it. Okay. And something you just said, what's your name? Allie said is important because if the stakes are low, then you're more willing, generally we as human beings are more willing to let go of a decision or kind of go with the flow. When the stakes get high, that's when collaborations are both more important and harder. So we'll talk more about that later.
The way we came up with our name was we were looking through, just discussing our metaphor. We were like brainstorming what kind of metaphors we would want to use. And the Lion King came up and she just yelled the name. So that's how our name came up. And I don't think I opposed to that.
And how about who reported?
She just decided to go.
To go? Oh, there it is. The reason why I decided to go, I know that they're kind of shy, and I'm not, as you can see. So I just took the first ring, but I'm sitting back now. I'm letting them do their thing.
So you're working to strengths, but you're also encouraging folks to stretch, is what I'm hearing. That's cool. Okay. All right. Let's see. I think that's it for that. So thank you for playing with me. All right. There are a lot of definitions of collaboration. And so this is just one. This is not the one. It is one that I like. By the way, there's little tiny citations at the bottom of sources. All those sources are listed on the final page of your PowerPoint handout in detail with actual full citations. And these are all, I've read a million books and articles, and these are my favorite articles. You may have your own. But these are the ones, so just so you know, if you want to read the whole article or go to any of the sources I'm going to cite as we go forward now, that's how you find them. So I put it on the slide so you know where to find the specific content. And at the end, there's a sort of a list of all the resources I pulled from to put this together. Okay, so the one that I like, for what it's worth, and I like yours actually, is a group of people within or across organizations. That's important. It can happen within an organization like a committee or across organizations who align around a shared vision, which I think all of you picked up on in your definitions as well. The alignment and the shared vision and the group of people. And then target resources and activities in support of that vision. Does that make sense as a definition? Is there anything based on your own definition that you would lobby to add to that or shift about that? Or does it seem aligned? That works? Okay, so let's make that our working definition, but you can sort of mentally add any other pieces from your own definitions as well. So why do we collaborate? And I'm going to ask you for your thoughts, but here are some thoughts that I have come up with. So we collaborate to harvest collective knowledge. We live in a very dense information age, a very fast-moving world, right? And we can't all know. We can barely know what we don't know, let alone try to know everything. So we need folks around us who know different things, whether it's life experience, whether it's book knowledge, whether it's data, whether it's professional pedigree and experience, whether it's culture. We need folks around us who can fill in our gaps and even let us know that we have gaps, right? So collective knowledge is really key. Sort of in a similar way, but a deeper way, we work in collaboration to benefit from the group wisdom. So knowledge is like, I know some facts and I have some data and I have some understanding of something. Wisdom is, I've been through something, I've put the facts together in a certain way that have been infused with my own experience as a human on the planet, or in this group, or in this coalition, or in this community. And I bring that wisdom to the table to combine with everybody else's wisdom in ways that are new and different and beautiful and sometimes hard and sometimes a struggle, right? It's all those things. But what emerges from that complexity and that diversity and that struggle and that beauty is something of lasting significance and depth that is hard to get to on your own, even if you're the wisest person on the planet. We collaborate to pool our resources, because again, all of us are not made of time, money, or lots of human bodies waiting around to do stuff. So we need help to move our missions down the road to achievement. How many of you know the kid story Stone Soup? Can you just tell a quick, like, Cliff Notes version, and we're going to bring a mic to you, and just for anyone who has not heard that story, what's the 2-minute version?
The cook put a stone in the soup, and everyone thought that wasn't enough. So a bunch of people, someone brought in carrots, someone brought in potatoes, someone brought in onions, and together they made the soup.
That's right. That's beautiful. Thank you. And the point is that all of us, especially in the nonprofit sector, but really just in the modern world, may feel like we live in a time and a place of scarcity where we don't have all the resources to do everything we want to do. And so in the story, there's all these, I think it's a bunny or something that are hungry and just goes around and says, well, I have a stone, but do you have a leftover carrot? Do you have a little piece of, whatever? And then collectively, right, they put this soup together and have this beautiful meal out of it just from putting all their scraps and odds and ends into what had just been a rock in the water. So we love that story. And I think it's kind of the essence of collaboration. So we pool our resources to make our stone soup in our community, right? We do it to increase our program impact. So over the decades I've been in this sector, I've been in tons and tons of initiatives and collaborations to help people who have cancer, or to help animals, or to increase racial justice. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons and ways that we come together to have our programs have more impact. I know that Lifelong, for example, is involved in many collaborations, the Clinic Consortium, and just many, 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 many collaborations across the healthcare field, and I think beyond it is just one example. We collaborate to increase our political influence. So right now, some of you are probably aware, in the county there's a new district attorney who is going to be appointed, and there's a process that the Board of Supervisors is doing to help that happen. And there's many, many folks in the community who are coming together to discuss and talk about and advocate around what kinds of qualities and values they want that person to have. So that's kind of a real life example of increasing political influence. So one person speaking at the Board of Supervisors hopefully does have influence and value. I mean, inherently they do, and hopefully they're heard that way. But if 100 or 200 people come or write letters, that really, exponentially increases that impact and influence. And then why else do we collaborate? So why do you all collaborate? It can be tough. It can be time consuming. Why do it? Okay, well, come here and then over here.
To fill a void, fill a need. There's people come together, bring their time, treasures, and talents, so they all share a common vision to fill a need.
Thank you. Why else do we collaborate? Why do you collaborate?
It's just kind of, as humans, we're hardwired to work together, whether we organized as Stone Age tribes or complex modern societies. That's just how we get things done. It's in our very nature.
You're right. Why else do you collaborate?
On the work, I think people just like to get together, and the work is also very hard and challenging. So the networking aspect and the social support that comes with the networking and the collaborating is important.
Anything else? Why you collaborate that's not yet up here or not yet spoken in the room? Okay. Let's talk about when we collaborate. So we've already sort of hinted at some of this, because there's also times to not collaborate, honestly, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So when there are complex needs and so for example, the initiative that I run, Ensuring Opportunity, the goal is to end poverty in Contra Costa. I mean, certainly little old me cannot do that. And so we have a little tiny staff of 2, and we can't do that by ourselves, and nor would we want to try. So we collaborate with, as Jim said, dozens, if not hundreds of other people and organizations from across all the sectors, all issues, to make that happen. Because ending poverty, as you all know, because you are in some part of that work yourself, most of you, is very complex. And there's lots of historical legacy reasons that folks are struggling to make ends meet, and things that can't be fixed by next Tuesday, but take much work and much struggle to get there, right? And then systems that need to be shifted and fixed, et cetera, et cetera. So that's hard, complex work. And you don't do it with 3 people in a room. You do it with, you might start with that, but then you must engage folks who are most impacted by the work, and then with folks who are in positions of power to influence that, lifting up folks who are impacted in positions of power. I mean, there's layers and layers and layers of the work. And so collaboration is absolutely essential, right, to have my vision, our shared vision of ending poverty in this county come to life. So that's just one example. Also, we want to collaborate, and this unfortunately is a little less true maybe than when I started my career, but still very much more evident than I would like. When there are silos, I mean, how many of you know of 2 organizations doing kind of the same work but don't talk to each other? That drives me bananas, and I think we're all collectively getting a little better at it. But it still happens, and it's wasteful, and it's dumb, and it's, egos instead of the mission a lot, which I don't have any patience for, although I try to be sympathetic to human nature. And then fragmentation. So right now, in my campaign, we're working on a lot of housing issues, and we're talking a lot in our work to folks in the health field, because housing is what they call a social determinant of health, meaning if you don't have adequate, safe, and affordable housing, your health is going to suffer. So guess what? Health folks and housing folks can't be in their silos anymore, right? We got to be together talking about what the issues are and figuring out how to pool our resources, collaborate, and make some stone soup. Then another reason, kind of related, is that the context of the environment requires a unified response. An example of this is in the last several months in Contra Costa, the Contra Costa Immigrant Rights Alliance has been formed as a sort of new coalition. And there's many, many members from state immigration organizations, regional, county level, city level, a bunch of folks who are working on racial justice. I mean, all kinds of folks from all kinds of places have come together to figure out how to protect folks in our community who are immigrants and who are scared right now, right? And so that has arisen out of an environmental need from the last 6 months when federal policy has been changing or threatened to change. So folks are coming together in new ways to address that threat. And of course, the sort of joking one, but kind of not, because my funder told me to. So have any of you ever sort of joined a collaboration because your funder said, hey, you should work with those 2 organizations and I'll fund you guys? That has happened to me. Has that happened to you guys? Right, I see some nodding heads. That is bad and evil, and we've been working on funders for a long time to not do that. Because when you have a forced collaboration, it's kind of like a forced marriage. It really does not start on a good foot. It doesn't create trust, and all the capacities we're going to talk about later to create solid collaborations. They're not there if you're just kind of forced to a table. You can actually construct it even with that bad beginning. And I've been in collaborations that have done that, but you kind of are behind the 8 ball for a long time. And kind of the funder, who usually is not even in the room, has this undue pressure and power that really influences and kind of corrupts people's sense of why they're there and how much they can rely on each other to do the work. So I really strongly discourage funders from doing that. I think most of our local funders have moved away from that and are more sophisticated now. I would also, encourage and empower you that if you are encouraged by a funder or told by a funder, voluntold, to collaborate with other folks, to maybe have a deeper conversation with that funder, to say, let's talk together about how this serves the community and how we might do it differently to build sustainability and true collaboration. And hopefully you have relationships with your funders where you can have those hard conversations, because guess what? They don't have it figured out either. And even though they have power and influence in that they have the checkbook, you have power and influence in that you're delivering the services and delivering the goods. So never forget that that's a empowered situation, and to step into that power and have these conversations and not continue that dysfunction. Again, it's getting better, but I do hear of examples here and there. Any other ideas or examples on when to collaborate? When do you choose to collaborate? Yes, up front here.
We're now where we're going to be collaborating. The coalition has recognized a severe housing shortage here in California. That's my background. I'm in housing. So I think when to collaborate is triggered when, personally speaking, when I committed to face this challenge of housing, and when I committed to it. So I wanted to find other people who were like-minded, who were also committed to this, and that's when we collaborate. Because I'm not going to collaborate with anybody who's not seriously minded about this, because this is my passion. This is what I'm here for. I'm here to try to improve the quality of life for people and provide housing, because this homelessness stuff is just unacceptable.
I love it. That's great. So when you are committed, starting with yours, because change starts in your own heart and mind, right? And then you find others that you're drawn to you and you're drawn to them because they have that same commitment. That's great. And that'll come up again when we talk about capacity for collaboration later, because that is a non-negotiable. You hit the nail on the head. So why else or when else would you collaborate? Anything else to add to this? Okay. Let's talk about the many flavors and forms of collaboration. There are a lot. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think a lot of you live in these places and know this intuitively. But just to point out, there's different ways that we collaborate, and some of them we may not in our heads call collaboration, but it is. So again, there's internal teams. If you're working in an organization, there's the management team or the whatever team, the program team, the whatever division team, et cetera. There's committees, such as a finance committee. This could be within an organization or outside of the organization or across a couple of organizations. There's coalitions. I know Healthy and Active Before 5 is here today, and I've done some work with you guys. Great organization. So they're a coalition of many organizations working toward a common goal. And there's networks, and this is kind of a more fluid. So there's Indivisible. Have you guys heard of Indivisible, the sort of political movement that's grown up the last several months? To resist some of the national policies. And then there's sort of professional networks, and the example I give, though there's many, is Grant Makers for Effective Organizations, which is an organization I happen to really love and cite a lot in terms of their content. So that's another type of network. One is more of a community-based network that's political, versus GEO, or Grant Makers for Effective Organizations, is more of a professional network, folks who share that professional background and focus. There's movements, again, many movements. Black Lives Matter is one example, I think a fantastic example of a movement, which goes beyond organizations to embrace communities and cultures and people and just anyone who wants to be in that struggle together. And then there's public-private partnerships, meaning there's a government piece and then there's a nonprofit or sometimes for-profit or both piece to the work. So a local example is Contra Costa Cares. And if those of you not familiar with that, there's in our third year, I think, of the county partnering with local hospitals like Kaiser and Sutter and John Muir to provide health care for those who are remaining uninsured under Obamacare. So that's primarily undocumented immigrants. We hope that pool does not grow larger under the current policy discussions in Washington, but for right now it's mostly immigrants. And so there's everyone coming together and putting money into the mix, and then there's a lot of nonprofits involved in providing the community clinics like Lifelong actually providing that health care. So it's a many-part public-private partnership that everyone puts something into the mix, whether it's expertise and service or it's funds. It's everyone kind of making that stone soup in that way. And then collective impact initiatives, which Robert mentioned. And if we're having a longer workshop, we could do a whole sort of piece on collective impact. But for right now, how many of you are familiar with collective impact and know what that is? Oh, in the resources, I actually list the original collective impact article, which was published in 2011, I believe, by the Stanford Social Innovation Review. By the way, if you're kind of a process and collaboration nerd, the Stanford Social Innovation Review, or SSIR, is a really great publication. And there's a couple of articles that I have on the last page there for you. So you can learn more about collective impact. But basically, it's a relatively new methodology, about 6 years around, that a lot of organizations have adopted. When you're doing, again, complex issues that you folks have a common agenda around, and that you have shared measurements, so there's some rigor to it. So you know what to measure, how to measure your progress. There's mutually reinforcing activities, which is kind of mumbo jumbo. It just means you're all aligned in the actions that you're collectively and respectively taking to get to the shared measurements to achieve the common agenda. Let's say ending homelessness as an example. And there's ongoing communication, whether meetings or listserv or whatever. And then there's a backbone organization, which is kind of the organization that holds the administrative piece of getting the meeting notes out, hosting the meetings, holding the funds from the funders, whatever. So a lot of this is kind of a slight, formalizing things that we've done in this sector for many, many years, but kind of bringing some structure and rigor to it. So that's collective impact, and there's an article I cited that'll tell you a lot more than that, but just so you are aware of that model, I think it's an important one to know as you're looking at collaborative models, especially right now, because a lot of folks are doing it. Okay, and then are there any other types of collaboration that you can think of or that you're doing that I haven't mentioned yet? This is not an exhaustive list, it's just out of my head.
Well, for me, I'm on committees and I'm on coalitions, and I'm like, so like for example, I'm part of the Rainbow Pride Coalition. It's like, and that's collaboration enough. So I'm on that coalition, but I'm on a different committee for our neighborhood council International Day. So I'm just stretched out. So and like the ongoing communication, I get my emails like constantly, and I was like, I have to remind myself to put it on my calendar. So.
Yeah, so collaboration is a lot of moving parts, especially when you're in a lot of them.
I'm not sure if this description fits into this category here, but I term it as entrepreneurial co-op, where you have everybody maintains their autonomy, but everybody has commonality. So it's going to be interesting to see how we're actually forming right now with a lot of entrepreneurs on a simple goal. So I'm glad to be here.
That's great. Thanks for adding that.
And,
That's our
and
11
it is
o'clock
the first
siren.
Wednesday of the month, so that is a test siren for those who don't
panic.
know.
I think a family is a collaboration.
Oh, cool. Okay. A family. Yeah. You're right. Maybe the first collaboration. And that always goes smoothly, huh? I think you got it now.
Something similar to that, but community collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm part of the HOA in the building where I live, so we're always in collaboration as far as things that need to be done, and budgets and all that. So to that extent, that's one way I'm collaborating outside of that.
Yeah, so homeowner association. Yeah, great example. Cordelia, you have something else? Oh, wait for the mic. Thank you.
So I'm like him. I'm part of a neighborhood association, and we have our meetings, monthly, and it's very time consuming too. Like putting put the agendas and all that stuff. I mean, that's very hard.
Mm-hmm. Time consuming. We're going to talk about that more. All right. Let's talk about building our capacity for collective action. Because we're going to spend a fair amount of time on this. Because the first part has been just kind of giving an overview of what it is, when you do it, et cetera. And now we're going to talk about how to do it well. And I think many of you are here because you already do it well and want to, build your skill set or affirm that what you're doing is the right way to go about it. But I think you also may pick up a couple of tidbits as we go through this. So this is from one of my favorite articles, Building Collaboration from the Inside Out. And there's another one called Building the Capacity for Collective. Again, they're both listed on your final page. You can look at them later. And I've given you articles instead of books because I don't know about you, but I don't have time to read like 500-page books. So I'm just trying to give you the Cliff Notes version of how to get some high value from 20 pages instead of 200. But there's lots of books out there. If you ever want to know what some of the ones are that I like, you're welcome to talk to me afterwards or send me an email. Okay, so competencies for collaboration. So accepting responsibility, but sharing power. This is the delicate dance in collaboration where you take something on and you're accountable to the group to get it done, and yet to make sure it doesn't morph into my way or the highway, I'm going to run this whole show, I know how to do this, I've been around this block before, sit down and be quiet and I'll take care of it, right? And I'm sure that none of us ever do that, ever, but we may have seen that happen in collaborations with other people. I think we all have that within us to kind of lose that balance a little bit, especially if we're time pressed, especially if the stakes are high, and especially if we have been around the block a few times, then we might step on efforts to build new leadership, right? That's one of the challenges of being in a collaboration. Another competency is adapting to change or being flexible. So things happen. If you've ever worked on a political campaign, you know that things just can change overnight and suddenly the conversation is really different and you've got to step up and respond. That's also true even in programmatic collaboratives. So you're working on healthcare and then something's coming out of Washington that's going to change how you interact with your patients, or you're working on homelessness and the new study comes out showing that XYZ is the biggest cause of homelessness in Contra Costa, or whatever it is. There's always going to be change, new information. New people coming in, expertise going out the door because someone's moving to somewhere else. I mean, change is the constant. So you've got to just accept it and be able to adapt, right, as you go. Next is championing the customer's needs. I actually don't love the word customer, but I put it up as it was in one of the articles. And that means, for us, I think in social change and social sector work, it means putting the end user or the end beneficiary or the person most impacted by the policy of the program at the center of the work. That's the customer. That's what that means in our work. Meaning that in a collaboration, one of the temptations is you sit around a table and say, what should we do about all the health patients who are not getting follow-up treatment for their diabetes care? And then it's really tempting and easy to sit in a room on a Tuesday morning and make those decisions, and that's not an inherently bad thing. But if you're not talking to the folks who are struggling with getting to their appointments because they have to take 3 buses, and you don't know that because you're sitting in your office, right? That's an example of where you don't know what you don't know, and the folks that are most impacted, the end user, customer, beneficiary, et cetera, whatever word you want to use there, have got to be in that conversation. And there's a lot of conversation in our sector right now about how do you do that skillfully, with authenticity, and with integrity, and in a way that respects the busy lives of those folks who maybe work in 2 jobs and maybe can't come to a meeting on Tuesday morning, right? So that's something to really, really think about. And again, we could do a whole conversation on that, but just to really put a flag in that one. So communicate and interact effectively, meaning meetings are scheduled, folks show up to meetings, they participate in the meetings, someone takes notes of the meetings, there's a list at the end of follow-up items, and then there's follow-up on those items, and then at the next meeting there's accountability, and if something changes, you let the group know, And then folks can practice their adaptability and flexibility as needed to fix that piece of what's going on that's changing or a new opportunity that's come up. That's the communication piece. So if you're off in your silo, again, we talked about silos. If you're off in your silo, like doing your little tiny piece and not thinking about how your piece is going to impact some other folks who are doing their piece over there across town, you're not going to have a good collaboration. So that's the communication piece. Displaying creativity. This is sort of an open mindset, or what I like to call permeability. So I've been in collaborations where some folks come in the room and they have got it all figured out. They just know exactly what needs to happen, and by next Tuesday we're doing this. And they are not open to new information or divergent viewpoints. That is like a death knell for a collaboration. And I'm in a couple collaborations now that have a somewhat, not the death knell version, but a struggle with that, because a couple of folks have a lot of expertise and really want to offer it, which is great, but they're not open to the different kinds of expertise of other folks in the room, right? How many of you have been in a collaboration like that, right? Where there's some folks that just really got it all figured out. It's not fun. And there's ways to set up group processes and norms and guiding values so that you can maybe not fully check someone who's like that, but really encourage them to stretch into another way of being in that group. And to stretch yourself, because we all, again, have these tendencies. Authentic relationships. That's the connectivity. So someone earlier mentioned just being in a room with other human beings is what drives us to form collaboratives. That's really true, and it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes our professional role, like I'm not the CEO, I'm just the administrative assistant, might prevent someone from speaking out or fully contributing. Or if you are the CEO, you may be overly sharing. And I loved how at the back table here that you were stepping forward and then stepping back. That's very graceful. It's a lovely skill to bring into a collaborative space. It's a good example. And so how do we form these relationships where our authentic selves can come out? We can take some risks. We can go a little bit into our uncomfortable zone if we're a little shy or more introverted. If we're not quite sure, don't have as much expertise, can we ask a question from a beginner's mind and see if that triggers a different kind of conversation, right? There's all kinds of ways to be in a space together with authenticity that's deep and held, and it's important to create group experiences that build that and that sort of hold that space. Inspiring and motivating others. I mean, hopefully this goes without saying, but if you're in a collaboration and putting all that time and effort in, right? You want to feel inspired and that you're getting somewhere positive and not just sitting around and, looking at your watch until the meeting ends. And that part of your responsibility is not only be inspired, right? And find ways to plug in, but to really lift up and inspire others. So if someone's new to the collaboration, is a little more withdrawn, is a little uncertain, has an idea that is divergent from other ideas, what is your responsibility and your role to connect with that person and say, that's really interesting, Susie, tell me more about what you're thinking there. We've never heard that before, and that's so intriguing. As opposed to saying, oh no, we've never done that, that would not work. And then you've shut that person down, right? So how do you inspire others? Making accurate judgments and decisions. This is based on having the right data and doing the work, right? Doing your homework, having some rigor. But also having decisions made based on shared core values and alignment. And one of the biggest mistakes I see collaborations make is not spending time on the beginning to talk about shared values, how are you going to make decisions, criteria for making decisions, how to decide who's included in what spaces in that collaboration, who's going to sort of manage the collaboration, who's empowered. All those conversations for folks who are not process-oriented are like pounding a nail in your head. They hate them. I just say, too bad. Spend the time in the front end, or you're going to spend way more time on the back end in little food fights and power struggles, and who the heck wants that, right? So if you take one thing away from today, do the work up front, name things with intentionality, and then find ways to hold each other accountable to it. I'm in a collaboration right now of the One Contra Costa Coalition, which is working on the Contra Costa Cares program, the healthcare for uninsured. And we're slowing down our collaboration again after 2 years to do this work, because we realized we had to get clearer on how we make decisions, what the core values are that feed those decisions. And for example, we decided we're going to rotate facilitation of our monthly meetings so that we kind of share that position of authority amongst all the different organizations. We're going to share on a quarterly basis. It's a really simple thing to do. It's a culture shift. And not everyone in the group is loving that shift, frankly. But I think it's going to really make a big difference. And then finally, being able to solve complex problems. So if you're in the room, it's because you're involved in healthcare or housing or, whatever it is in our community that brings you to the space. And you already know it's complex. I don't have to tell you that. But to be able to not just sit with the complexity, but move towards solutions. And it might be tiny solution baby steps, or it might be a big grand vision. We need both. But to be moving the collaborative effort forward towards something is very important. Any questions or comments on any of this? Cordell. I'll wait for the mic, please. I should give Jim a heads up. Sorry, Jim.
So when I inspire, on my other side thing I do is I inspire a young person like to join in like an organization. So I told my friend Sydney that there's a youth council that you should apply for, and I said, so I helped her. I make her make decisions on her. I say that's something that you have to decide for yourself. So I think I solved that problem, a little complex. So, and then the other work that I do is I'm part of a neighborhood association that I have a good relationship with our president. I should have said my president and my vice president. We meet on a monthly basis, and we trying to figure out how can we make our group more efficient. Sometimes we make good decisions. Sometimes the decisions are a little awkward. So that's what I do. I do like a 3-step process. So
that's great. That's a great example. And I love that Richmond has so many neighborhood associations. That's where a lot of action happens in this town. And I think some of them are really strong and have competent. Some of them are struggling a bit, which doesn't make them bad people. It just means they need some support and some help and a little more intentionality about how they make decisions. Yeah.
How to make a decision when people disagree and then they couldn't come up to a kind of common agreement? They just persist continually on their own opinion. How do you kind of work in this case?
Does this sound familiar to anybody in the room? This kind of, right? Yes, we have all been in that space. So again, we could do a whole sort of workshop, which I'd love to do. But for now, I would say that's an example of spending time in the beginning, or like in the coalition I just mentioned, to have a reset button and kind of go back and do the work, which is common and fine. To talk about what are the core values that drive the work, which I know sounds woo-woo probably, but it really helps when you have to make a tough decision. And then secondly, to talk about and design an explicit decision-making process. So for example, in the Ensuring Opportunity campaign, we have a leadership team from across all sectors and areas of expertise, very diverse, some of them not often in the same room together because they don't agree on a lot of policy issues, but that's kind of the point, to get them in the room together. And so we devised what we call a temperature check. So we have criteria for decision making, and so we lay out the policy issue. So for example, last year we asked them to endorse a rent control effort in the city of Concord. So we laid out the issues and pros and cons, a very rigorous analysis that laid out all information on all sides. Then we had our team meeting, and we had 2 experts, one on each side of the issue, come in and provide some objective, outside expertise, maybe not always objective because they have their point of view, which is why we invited them, but outside expertise, so not just out of my mouth. And then we had a temperature check where we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is like, oh my God, I love it, we absolutely endorsed, do it yesterday, yes. And 5 is like, oh my God, no, that is terrible, and I will probably leave this group if you do it. And then in between are things in between. And so we don't do a vote first, we do a temperature check. And actually we did the temperature check before we had a meeting where the experts came in and we had a deeper discussion. So we gave people a chance to kind of think it through and say, here's where I'm starting. Again, you've got to have that flexibility and adaptability because they may end up in a different place at the end, and some folks did and some folks didn't, and that's fine. So the temperature check is, and then I brought the tally of the temperature check in a very transparent way to the group and said, here's where we landed. And in that case, it was pretty evenly split. There was no emerging consensus. So if there had been, we would have then sent out a formal vote and had a vote. And unless somebody was like, I'm going to walk away if you do this, then anything short of that, if we had a preponderance of yes, we would have gone forward. But because there was no clear consensus, right? So this is a complex example, but I think it sort of may give you some ideas. And then we came together as a group. We had the two different viewpoints come in the form of outside experts. And then we had a long discussion. And at the end, we did the same temperature check, but this time it was a vote. And this time, all but one of our members was the one, I forget which way the scale goes, but the one solidly in favor. And then one person was like a 4.5 and really not in favor, but stayed in the group because she felt that she was heard. And her viewpoint was expressed through an outside expert who came and shared that point of view. And they did ultimately vote to support the rent control campaign. So I give that example because I know it's complicated and there's lots of moving parts there. But because we spent months, like 4 months, developing and figuring out and coming back to the leadership team and going back and working on a staff to figure out what I just described. We did not come up with it one Friday and go, here's what we'll do at the meeting. I mean, it took a long time and was sometimes frustrating, like there's so much work to be done on the issue. Why are we doing the work on the process? I mean, even I, who's a process nerd, got a little impatient. But because we spent the time up front, then the process itself was seamless. And folks from very divergent viewpoints and political viewpoints, I mean, everything you can think of, different sectors, and certainly different views on this issue, were able to go through a process of learning, discovery, rigor, deeply feeling heard, and then having, though, a way to kind of go, okay, we've all felt heard, now let's come to decision. And that feels different to folks, and if a couple of strong personalities or those with more letters on the end of their names from credentials rams something through, which is a common sort of thing. So the loudest voice wins or the biggest expert wins. We really tried to craft something that was very inclusive and sort of got folks to a place where they could feel comfortable even if they didn't agree with the decision. So does that speak to your example, or was there a different set of challenges than what you're thinking of?
I think it's very complex challenge, and it depends on a case, and depends on a group of people. It depends on, sometimes it works as you described, sometimes don't. So, thank you.
Is yours more of a personality conflict?
Sometimes yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes like A-type people, they just fight. They just compete, and it's. Like the disagreement is so high that nobody wants to lose.
Right. So when you have a lot of type A folks or a lot of hot tempers and a lot of feeling is at stake, there's two things that I would suggest need to happen that are going to sound opposite but need to coexist. One is that you soften the space by creating opportunities for folks to connect as human beings and build relationships outside of that issue that matters so much to them and to their egos, right? And so it's just like you have a lunch before you have your whatever meeting of those folks, or you get the kids together, or whatever is culturally appropriate and time available, to kind of like soften that space out so it's not just the clashing of the egos, because that just gets really fixed, and set. And then the other thing is to get a lot of discipline and rigor, and again, how you make decisions. So it might be a really different example I just gave you, but to find some way in a loving, structured, non-favoritism way to say, thank you so much, Bob, we've heard from you, and now I want to see what Sydney thinks. And just have someone who's empowered as a facilitator, which is a whole skill set, and needs whole separate training. If you're not comfortable doing facilitation, I'd suggest take a workshop or have someone come in and do a workshop for the group. Again, be transparent about it. So let's all learn how to run our meetings better. I mean, whatever. But at least one person in that room has to be able to hold that space and say, thank you so much for that thought. And again, if one of your group agreements is some version of step up, step back, monitor your airtime. So again, if you have that in place, a group agreement, you can say, I really hear the passion behind what you're saying right now. I'm noticing that there's other folks who have not had a chance to talk. And I'm thinking about what we have on the wall right there around step up, step back. And I want to ask the group's permission, not the person's permission, for us to move on to hear from someone else. And then everyone nods their head and goes, yeah. And then you've got your way to move it past the pissing contest or whatever it is. So it's not easy, but it's sort of like, how do we soften that space but also put structures in that space to kind of move and manage through and past whatever that is. Because that just gets really toxic, and then people stop coming, and the only people in the room are people who are in that contest, and they're not focusing on mission, they're focusing on their egos, and then it's terrible. I mean, we've all been there probably. So good question, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
So when first establishing this collaboration, because I've been in different collaborations, people do it differently. Organizations collaborate differently, and I think it's really important initially to do, as you said, and sort of establish like a groundwork or how the process is going to be run. Is there a model or one or two or any specific models? Collaboration.
Yeah, sorry. So the question was, are there any models to refer to for collaboration? I think collective impact is one of them. That's more focused on how do you get to the outcomes versus so much on the group process. But again, by even just having a shared agenda, shared measurements, it gives some structure and rigor to what you all collectively agree to focus on, which allows you to redirect the attention back. Like if things are getting off track or heated, and heated is okay if the mission is advancing. Heated is okay. But how to manage through that heat, or if the heat is going really off the rails, how to get back on track. There's another model called TOP, Technology of Participation, which has local workshops here in the Bay Area. And this is not on the resources, so it's Technology of Participation, which I know is an odd name. If you go to the Center for Strategic Facilitation, so again, Center for Strategic Facilitation, it's based in Oakland, I believe, and their workshops are relatively affordable. And that's a whole way of getting groups to think up on a wall with a lot of Post-its. Have you ever sort of seen that process, which I think a lot of local government sectors use? Yeah, the Center for Strategic Facilitation. Strategic Facilitation, yeah. There's one in South San Francisco that's changed their name. The guy named Sam somebody wrote a book on facilitation. Does anyone in the room know what I'm talking about? I'm just having a mental blank. I cannot remember right now. If you go to Amazon, look at facilitation books and look for one that comes up a lot, you'll probably find this guy Sam. I apologize. There's sort of a classic book on facilitation. But his workshops, I went to one on how you facilitate complex processes, and there's a lot of things that would be helpful to what we've been talking about. Yeah. And Jim, I don't know if you have any favorite books on collaboration or facilitation, or if anyone else in the room does.
No, although one of the things I do like and actually use a lot myself are the stuff that come out of what you mentioned earlier, the Stanford Social Innovation Review magazine, because there's lots of things about collective impact, but other strategies as well. So definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
The Stanford Social Innovation Review.
Yeah, that is listed on the final page in the resources. A couple articles that I suggest, including the collective impact one. And they do really expensive conferences that I never go to because they cost a lot of money, but they have a relatively cheap subscription and also a great online website, and they have webinars, so they're actually a great resource. Sure. All right, so this is from one of my favorite resources, and it's listed in the back. So this is from the Networked Nonprofit, and then there's some related articles that are mentioned here. And so this is what we call the collaboration mindset. And I love this because it really boils everything we've been talking about and some of the issues you've been raising down to, if you have these mindsets and foster it in the groups that you're collaborating with, a lot of these problems go away or get easier. I think the most important one is to focus on the mission, not the organization. This is tough because we, in our culture and our leaders, et cetera, we get a grant and we are responsible for some work and we want credit for that work and we want to get funded next year. So that's the model. That model is actually not helpful to collaboration, right? Because if you're in a room going, I've got to get credit, so my funder sees that I'm helping X number of patients deal with diabetes or whatever, you don't maybe want someone else to get the credit. You're not incentivized, at least, to have someone else kind of share or get that credit. So this is actually a culture shift for how our sector, our nonprofit or social sector is structured in a lot of ways by funders and our own mindsets. So over the past decade or two, there's been a lot of talk in the nonprofit sector about building your brand, sort of all that for-profit stuff that we import over, build your brand. I'm not saying that's bad or wrong, but if you stop at building your brand or let that control all the decisions you make in a collaborative, you're going to be a terrible collaborative partner, right? So what we do want is focus on the mission. So if our mission is to end homelessness, everyone in that room, like the gut check thing is, I'm here to end homelessness. And then I have some assets, whether human capital, whatever, political influence, knowledge, wisdom, right, that I'm going to bring in the room and offer. And others have a bunch of other things that they're going to offer, and collectively we're going to do something fantastic, right? That's the mission. And so in a collaboration, both individually as each participant, but also collectively when you're making decisions, this is another thing you can do when things get tough, is to say, is what we're talking about right now serving the mission? We're trying to end homelessness here. Is this conversation driving that forward? And if not, can we redirect it? Boom, right? Folks cannot argue with that. If they want to argue with it, they need to go away. That is my line in the sand. If you're here because you want to get more money for your organization and more glory, and you're not here for the collective cause, go do this thing on your own. God bless you. You're doing more harm than good. Okay, second one is exercise trust, not control. So again, a lot of folks come in the room. They have a lot of expertise. They've got the way that they want to do it. They have some fun need to impress. Doesn't make us all bad people. We probably all have those temptations. But the better thing and the more effective thing, more importantly, is to trust that the group collectively, in its wisdom, in its shared knowledge base, in its collective action, is going to get the ball further down the field, period. Right? If you don't believe that to be true, again, take yourself out, go do your thing, God bless. But if you're going to be in that group, you want to trust, and you want to earn others' trust. And that means some of the other competencies we talked about, being authentic, bringing your full self into the room, being mission-focused, showing up, taking accountability. These things are all interrelated. But if you try to be the big dog in the room, people are going to discount you, not trust you. You're going to set the movement back, and you're going to look kind of ridiculous, although people may never tell you that, right? And so when you have someone in the room trying to be that big dog, again, there's a soft way to kind of soften them up and say, really glad you're in this space, and let me share why I'm here, right? To build that community. And then there's kind of a structured way to say, I can tell you're really passionate about this. Can we get back to the mission piece right now? And just invite them as much as folks can get into that space of trust versus control. That's the ongoing dance. There's not an easy solution, but the first part is to check yourself and see why you're there and how your behavior reflects that mindset. The third one is leading with humility and not brand. It's a sort of a version of number one. But again, instead of trying to say, we are the greatest ever to solve homelessness, our organization, yay, it's to lead with, I know a lot, and I'm worth a lot, and so are you and you and you and you, and I cannot wait to learn what your experience, your knowledge has brought to you that you can bring into the space. I am so eager to learn. And I don't know everything. I know a lot, and I'm really proud of it, and I don't know everything, and I really want to know what you know. That's humility. And even deeper humility is cultural humility, to say, I'm in a space with a lot of complexity, culturally, geographically, whatever, and there's lots I don't know about things beyond my own personal or cultural experience, and I'm here to learn more about that and to listen and listen and listen and be curious and listen and be respectful, right? And then lastly, think like a node, not a hub. And so, let's draw a quick picture here. So the hub, again, is like the nonprofit model for collaboration from, 20 years ago. So here's like the big dog organization that gets the grant, blah, blah, blah. And then all these organizations get like mini grants or sub-grants or whatever from the main organization. Structure that's a fairly common, like in a collective impact organization. I mean, somebody's got to get the grants. That's not inherently bad. But what is inherently bad is if all the energy is flowing back and forth from the hub to the sort of outlying little planets, there's a lot of energy that goes into and comes out of that big dog organization, or that hub. And you're noticing there's not as much connectivity, right, between everyone else. And that's like an opportunity cost. If you're not having those rich conversations among everyone to harvest the collective wisdom, then you're missing out. And so the more modern, effective one is like this. where everything's connected to everything. And you might have an organization that is the backbone or is the receiver of the grants. I mean, that's fine administratively. You've got to have someone to sort of do that usually. So that's not bad inherently. But you've got to really be careful to think about how you design and distribute power, the input, influence. And if you find yourself kind of in a coalition or designing a coalition or thinking about a coalition where there's kind of a big dog, whether it's you or someone else, be very, very careful to distinguish between administrative holder of stuff versus power center, decider, everything flows through them. Don't do that second one. I mean, there might be times where that makes sense, but in our modern complex world, I would argue it almost never does. Any questions or comments on this? Yeah.
The node model, I'm familiar with the hub model. In fact, I was thinking about setting up something like that, but then after hearing what you said about the node, the issue that pops to my mind is coordination of communication, of energy, direction, because it would be pretty ambiguous to have, floating particles without any direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think the challenge is maybe if you encapsulate the entire node into an organization where the node is like the stuff inside of a cell, right? That makes the cell work.
That's cool.
But anyway, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I would say, so just to give an example, so node does not mean free-floating, unformed. It actually means interconnected much more deeply, actually, and across many more pathways, so much more structured in a way, or more connected at least, than the hub model. So as an example, I've talked about the One Contra Costa Coalition. So the way that works is the administrative, like sending out meeting notes and agendas and organizing the space for the monthly meetings, meeting reminders, listserv, that stuff is coordinated by one organization. Another organization sort of founded and gave birth to the coalition and kind of holds the history and the legacy and the culture and some of the process conversations that we have. So those are the two kind of holders of different parts of this node-style coalition. And then all of us collectively, and again, I was saying earlier, we've just decided, so in fact, I can say we've just made a fixed to go more from this, more to this, because that drove our decision to start rotating on a quarterly basis who facilitates the meetings, which sounds like a little thing, and it is a little thing, it's not hard to do, but it's really powerful, right, to have different people in the front of the room who might be younger, have different skin color, have different life experience, or at least, over the time will be more diverse variations of that, who are then taking turns facilitating the monthly meeting. So the administrative kind of organization still sends out the notes and does all the backup work, but the sort of focus of who's in front of the room, helping to guide and facilitate the conversation, rotates among members, which is very empowering. And it also means it calls folks into being accountable, because you can't come into a room and facilitate a meeting unless you've really prepped your brain. And how many of us are in coalitions where someone else is always running it, so you kind of come, sit in the back, check your email. You're a good person, but right, we check our emails in some of these meetings. We know what's going to happen. But if you're in the front of the room, you got to own that space in a whole different way. So that's an example of designing a node while having specific functions still held by specific organizations who have very specific accountability. That makes sense. So yeah, it's not sort of free form or total structure. There's lots of ways to design in between. Okay. So we want to get you to a moment of pause and reflect. We're just going to take a couple of minutes here. So want you to think about a collaboration you are involved in. And then thinking about the competencies, and I'll flip back to that page, but thinking about the competencies, thinking about which of those are currently most present within this specific collaboration you're going to, real life, one you're actually in, that you're involved with. And then where is there room for improvement? So think about a collaboration you're involved in. Where are those competencies showing up strong? And where is there room for improvement? And then in about 2 minutes, I'm going to have you share with your neighbor, but I want you to do this on your own just for a minute so you can think it through. Is the assignment clear? Where are the competencies showing up? Where there are some gaps? I'm going to go back to the competencies. And then we'll pair up in 2 minutes, but first do this on your own. And just start talking with your neighbors about what you came up with. And I would say that Vegas rules apply. If you name, please honor confidentiality, or you can choose not to name the coalition. Again, I know it's a small town, so your discretion there, but please honor confidentiality. And I'm not going to ask you to report out. This is just for your own conversation. And we'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, jump in. That's a sign of a good conversation. You don't want to stop. But guess what, guys? We got 14 more minutes, and I got some content to get through. So we're going to power on here. Okay, thank you, Cordell, for that time check. All right, so welcome back. So I'm going to do kind of a power walk through the last couple of things, and then I want to give you a little time at the end to come back in groups, actually, and talk a little bit more about what you're just talking about. So let me go forward here. Okay. So this is, to the question that somebody raised earlier, when do you decide whether to join a collaboration or form a collaboration? And we've talked about some of those times when a collaboration makes sense. But to really kind of unpack that a little bit, right? So is there enough momentum around the issue in the community, in the media, in the conversations that you're hearing at your neighborhood association or whatever? Is there just like, oh my God, we got to do something? Is there that feeling that something needs to happen? Or that something's happening, we got to step it up. Or something's happening, but it's the wrong thing, we got to turn it around, right? There's that something's got to happen. You listen and look for that. Because if no one really cares about something, they've all got the 6 committees they're already on, as we illustrated in the beginning. So they're not going to join another collaboration unless they're filling an urgent need that's not met about an issue that they care about and feel they can impact, right? So that's kind of the first, criterion. Is this the right time? There's all kinds of issues that need all kind of help that all kinds of folks are working on, which is great. There's room in the world for all of us. But is this the right time for this group of folks or this issue to get some folks together to talk about it? Do we have the information we need? The answer is almost always going to be not fully. That's cool, but just understand what you don't know and what you need to go find out. First question is there anybody else working on this issue? Because again, you don't want to be in a silo off in your corner doing something and someone else down the street is doing the exact same thing, right? So do your homework, ask around, see who else is working on it, see if they're a high functioning or at least well enough functioning collaboration. Maybe you join with them. What can we learn from related efforts? So there's some other folks in the community working on housing and homelessness. And so go talk to them and find out what piece they've bitten off, what they're doing, what they've learned, what's on their wish list, who else they wish was at their table. Again, it may or may not make sense for you to join their table because you might have a different slice of housing or whatever that you're working on, but at least be aware of what else is happening in the landscape. And what can you learn from what they've tried and failed at and done great? Learn from those who come before you. Don't reinvent the wheel. What are the possible paths forward? There's many different ways to organize collective work. Is it going to be a political campaign? Is it coordinating service programs? Is it doing a communications campaign around a certain issue? What is possible paths? You don't have to have it all figured out when you start. In fact, it shouldn't just be the idea in your beautiful head. You want to get together and co-invent. But be open to many possible paths. And it may not be the path that you end up on. It may not be the one you thought you were going to start on, and that's fine. Because you get more information, you get more connected, you figure some stuff out, you get all that collective wisdom in the room, you might go somewhere else. That's great. Be open to that. And then what value can we add? Meaning you as a person, you as your organization, you as the content expertise you bring into the room, or the community relationships, or the whatever the assets are you bring into that space. Be clear about it. Be clear about what you bring, and be humble about it. You bring a lot. There's a lot you don't bring. Both those things are great and true and will always be true. This is the What's in it for me, or WIFM. Anybody ever heard of WIFM? That's the acronym, What's in it for me. And so this is to point out that a lot of the talk around collaborations around sort of like being humble and being a collective spirit, all of which is true for all the reasons we've discussed. But it's also good to be selfish in a certain way. So you want to be clear about what motivates you to be in that space. And you want to be clear with yourself, and you want to be clear with others. And you may need to check yourself a bit. So if you want to be in that space because you want to get all the glory and all the funding money, like maybe step back and think a little bit more about the mission piece that draws you in that space. So do that own work first if you have to. But what motivates you from the mission point of view, from your organization's mission, your personal values, your organizational values? What compels you to be in that space and spend yet more time in meetings? Be clear about it. It's not just because your funder asked you to, or shouldn't be. It's not just because Billy Sue, who runs your board, said you should be in that space, right? There's an example, a couple of concrete examples that I've seen used. This one's actually been around for 40 years, but I don't know how much is used these days. Where you get a bunch of the 3x5 index cards, and you pass everyone gets one, and on the front side, and nobody puts names down or organization names, it's anonymous. And on the front, you put down what are some of the things that we can offer to the group. So we have expertise in child poverty. We have good connections with local elected officials, like whatever it is. And then that's on the front. On the back, you put in what it is that you want to get from this, being in this collaborative. So you want to, so for example, we did this exercise in a coalition that I'm in, not index cards, but another version. And so what I said for ensuring opportunity, what we want to get out of it is better connected with residents who are most impacted by the policies we're working on. And we wanted to build our relationships within the West County community. So those are just valid things that we want to get out of this. We want to get smarter about ways to address the issue that the coalition's working on. We want to build collective power to get our policies addressed by elected officials. Like some version of that was our list. And so then on the index cards, you have what you're going to offer, what you want to get. And then you mix them up in a hat, pass them around, and then different people read each other's without knowing who the other is, what they offer, and then what they want to get. And it just helps get out into the space in a safe way. It reminds us all that we're here to get something and that we're also here to give something. And it also helps you start to build that collective capital. It's like, wow, 6 of the 10 of us have good relationships with elected officials in this region. That's super cool. How do we leverage that? Wow, a lot of us want to really kind of build up our knowledge base about blah, blah issue. How do we make sure we bake that into our meetings? It starts to help you design, intentionally, processes that get folks what they need to have to be in the space and feel successful and fruitful. And it helps to leverage and utilize the incredible collective and individual assets that folks bring into a space. Does that make sense? So that's one way to do it. Another one is the Healthy Richmond chart. So that is in your handout in very imperfect form as a screenshot, but also a handout in better form attached to your agenda. If you look on the back side of that, the very last column, and I don't have it in front of me, says something about, let me peek on yours. That one there. Yeah, so it says organizational self-interest. It's like, boom, just name it, put it down. So we had an exercise where everybody in this coalition went through, and we have a Google Doc, and they all went on the Google Doc and just said, here's my self-interest. Meaning, here's why I'm at the table in terms of how we want to benefit from this. And it's part of it is the mission, but it's also beyond the mission. So folks are saying they want to be better connected to this constituency, know more about that issue, build relationships over here. Things like that are very common answers. So the part of your design then of your coalition or your collaborative is how do we get that to happen intentionally, since we know what each other wants. And that way you don't have these hidden agendas or wondering why someone's in the room. They're telling you why they're in the room. And as you build trust in the organization or the coalition, then folks can own it and say it explicitly. But this is a good first step. So in the chart that you have, that's kind of stage 2, where folks are just have some trust and are just naming what they hope to get out of being a member. We're going to skip this one, but just to say on your own time, you might want to look at think about a collaboration, maybe the one you're just talking about before, what motivates you to be there, and to what extent have you shared and been authentic and intentional in sharing those motivations with the group. And think about what would happen if you did, right? So building trust. We talked about this a lot, so just being authentic, being flexible, meeting folks where they are, holding that vision or mission at the center, and those most impacted by the issue or program at the center, as we discussed. Addressing power dynamics through some of those structural fixes and just sometimes naming something in the room. Having core values that you can refer back to, which might be things like inclusivity, equity at the center of our work, et cetera. If you have those on a list somewhere, it gives you the power to kind of reference them. Being culturally fluent and remembering that trust takes a long time to build but can be easily broken. And then kind of to point out the obvious, but collaboration can save a lot of time but also takes a lot of time, right? So you've got to be aware and budget for it and ask your funders for money for collaboration as part of whatever program or initiative you're designing, right? It takes time, it takes staffing, it takes admin support. And it'd be better to do it, it could be damaging to not do it well. So it's better to invest to the extent you have the collective capacity, the time, the staffing, the admin support, instead of having this crappy coalition that just is tearing at each other's throats. That's our collective, right? So you need funds to do that. You need attention. You need a time budget. You don't just go to the meeting and go away, go to your next meeting. There's lots of things in between meetings to do and think about and connect with people around. Don't shortchange it, right? It's better to be on fewer collaborations and do them well than to be on 26 and be bad in all of them, please. So collaboration laboratory, and actually, again, I'll make this a takeaway homework because I want to leave a couple minutes for questions. So this is, maybe go away and take the collaboration you were talking about, or you can pick a different one when you're doing this on your own later. And this is, I love the magic wand questions. If you could wave your magic wand, so you have a magic wand for the day, what is one thing you'd love to change about this collaboration? And then what is one thing you've learned today that you can try with this group that you're thinking about to try to get at that problem or that challenge? And then what's one specific step you commit to trying next? And the reason I'm ending with this is that all of us, and I've been in a billion trainings and I'm guilty of this too, if you don't go out and do something concrete right away, this is going to float away to be the PowerPoint that's in your folder somewhere and with the best of intentions. And it might kind of sink in at some level and emerge. I hope it does emerge for you with some concrete ideas that might float up when they do. But a better practice is to really just, and it might be a tiny baby step, like I'm going to suggest to this coalition that's driving me a little nuts right now that we create some core values or some principles. And I'm going to contact 3 other coalitions I'm in to see if they have something like that. For example, tiny, tiny, tiny baby step. It's just a little step into the pool, right, to experiment with some of this intentionality, authenticity, design, sort of how to create structures and also soften that space to have better coalitions and collaborations. Make sense? All right, so just left a couple of minutes here, and I apologize, there's always so much content to try to impart, and the conversations were great. So any last sort of questions, comments, any wisdom that anyone here wants to add into the space before we close? All right, I think lunch is calling you. So without further ado, thank you so much for allowing me to be in the space with you today, and best of luck.
Just some parting remarks. Just want to announce that we have another training coming up on October the 5th here, same time, 10 a.m. to noon. It's on board recruitment and development with Stephanie Roth, and she'll be here. Also, there are flyers in the back as you leave. There'll be some flyers on the table if you want to take one, just as a reminder. And if you wish to visit our webpage, this training was recorded, and it'll probably be up in about a day or two, right? So if you want to come back and reference it, watch it, and all of the previous trainings, all the preceding trainings that we've had on fundraising and budget and logic models. Those are also available on our webpage for free to watch just by clicking on a link. And if anybody would want materials associated with that, you could reach out to us at ECIA grants at ci.richmond.ca.us, and that information is on the flyer. I know I'm running through it pretty quickly. Catch me afterwards if you want my card or anything like that. Ms. Moore, would it be possible if I could send a PDF to people if they wanted it? Oh, so if anybody wants a PDF, because I know the font was a little small on some of the sources. So if you want, I will make a PDF of her PowerPoint, and then I can send you the PowerPoint with full size page slides. I just want to say a couple thank yous. First off to Ms. Moore, thank you so much. This felt like a graduate level class to be, but which is good. It was a lot of material. It was very dense. It was very rich. And I think you had to come in this space serious about wanting to improve and wanting to get better. And I feel like the majority of you all here absolutely have that spirit, and I appreciate you all for that. I want to thank RCF and Jim Becker and Monica and Stacy for partnering with the city. I want to thank our KCRT staff, Brian and Johnny and Christian. I want to thank our custodial staff, Gabino, who did this wonderful setup. Gabino is lovely. I want to thank Office City for giving you all free pens and detergent and pencil cups and all those wonderful things. And lastly, I just want to thank all of you for coming out. And I appreciate you all's spirit for being here. And like Ms. Moore said, I hope that you guys continue, not just with us, but I hope that you feel inspired as you gain more information to seek out other resources, right? To seek out more information, because I feel like you all will benefit, and those who you serve will benefit, because I feel like there is so much passion in this room and there's so much potential. And I feel like as you empower yourselves, you're going to be empowered to address those that you are addressing. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see and hear from you all again. Thank you.